I live in a small town in Massachusetts where nothing big ever seems to happen. However, a few years ago, my older brother was in a pretty bad car accident that seemed to leave him more mentally damaged as opposed to physically. Our parents ended up putting him in the local psychiatric hospital, Tewksbury State Hospital. My family has never talked about it much. I was too young to understand what exactly was going on at the time. All I knew was one day my brother was perfectly fine, and then the next, he was up at that creepy rundown place they call a hospital. I didn't even know it existed until then, and I've lived here my whole life. The incident happened when I was a freshman. It had been raining out, and my brother was driving on Main Street. He hit a pole in front of our local Domino's Pizza, but from what I've heard here and there, from whispered conversations between my mom and dad, and stories from the upperclassmen, the accident had something to do with this abandoned park right next to the Domino's, across the street from the country club. Now, it used to be a mini golf course called Funland. I never even glanced at the place more than once or twice. All I ever saw were trees and a fence. But recently, I noticed some of the trees had been cut down, and I could actually see into the park for the first time. What could be in there that did so much damage to my brother? I needed to find out. My friend Matt knows more about the park than anyone else I know. He's really into creepy abandoned places. His girlfriend Jenny had been taking pictures since her first art class. She likes going to these random places and taking photos. The old Funland Park had been on their list of places to explore for a while now. They came to me a few weeks ago and asked if I wanted to check it out with them. Matt is one of my friends that knows what happened to my brother, or at least all I know about it. My parents have forbidden me to talk about it to anyone. I'm not even allowed to ask them questions. It's something that's been gnawing at me for the past few years. I want to know what happened to him. I want to know what's inside that decrepit old park. We finally went in about a week ago. Matt insisted that we go about a half an hour before sunset. That way Jenny could take some pictures in the daylight, and we could scope out the park for safety purposes. You can never be too careful in places like these, he told me. You never know what could be there. According to him, some of the local kids have been getting over the fence from the back left side, behind what used to be batting cages. It was a good thing that we were doing this during the dry season. That whole area is prone to flooding. Heck, the whole town is. Whose bright idea was to build in swampland. And when we got to the fence, we could tell where and how people have been getting into the park. There were several spots where the fence was already crushed down or raised up, allowing the option to jump over or crawl under. We picked the first option, using a conventional pile of boards to boost ourselves up. Matt dropped down first, making sure that the area was clear before he helped Jenny over. Once we were officially in the park, I sort of just stayed back and let Matt and Jenny do their thing while I looked around. Jenny was off taking pictures of the old batting cages. It was a lot bigger than I thought it would be. There were even baseballs left in the automated pitching machines, but they were rotted down with decades of exposure. When I looked over at her, she beamed from ear to ear, her camera snapping away at one of the machines. Its coat of green paint was faded, but you could still see the number 6 written on the side. Matt was standing on the central area, just outside the cages themselves. It looked like someone had set up a makeshift skate park. There was even a go-kart sitting there, still intact. Let's go around the golf course first. It looks like it's still going to be hard maneuvering in there, even with most of the trees gone, Jenny said. I nodded in agreement. We followed Matt further into the park. The course was even more run down than the batting cages. The fake green turf at each hole was muddy and covered with old leaves. The first structure we saw was what we assumed at first was a shed. Turned out to be a dollhouse that was even taller than me. It even had a balcony. There were bits of glass from the windows that was scattered around, smashed and cracked, either from decay or vandalism. I was actually pretty impressed that there wasn't more vandalism. It's one thing if you want to appreciate an old place by just looking at it and taking pictures, but it's another to break stuff or spray paint over everything. That's just not right. If there had been anything in the fake house before, it was gone now. Moving forward, we saw a little wishing well. The roof was red and real slating, and the fountain was brick. We found a huge white rocket ship that sat at the center of the course, with the words Funland written on either side. "What's that over there?" Ginny asked, pointing in the direction of the smallish white building at the entrance. I think that's an arcade," Matt replied. "And that little one in the front looks like where you get the golf balls and putters, you know?" "Yeah," I replied, scanning the area. And then something caught my eye. "What's that thing over there?" It looked like a weird wooden shack with sort of transparent door. The turf area was inclined and went under the door. "The 18th hole," said Jenny, snapping another picture. "It says so right there." "Yeah, but what's it supposed to be?" I asked. It sort of looks like an outhouse," Matt pointed out. "Oh, I see it now. Weird. Ring bell for free game with a hole in one," Jenny read. "Hey, what's that?" She bent down, brushing some of the leaves out of the way of what she was seeing. "What is it?" "It's a cell phone," she said, turning it over in her hand. The thing looked ancient, caked in dirt. "There's no use trying to get it to work. At least I can get a picture," she said, placing it back down on the ground to do just that. "It looks like something should be inside here," I pointed out, stepping onto the turf mound as I peered through the transparent door. "We're losing sun," said Matt, gesturing for Jenny and I to follow him as he turned back to where we came from. "I want to take a look at this storage shack." Jenny and I followed after him. When we reached the rectangular white building, Matt and I searched for some way to peek in, while Jenny took her last few photos in the twilight. There was a large metal door on one side, but it was clearly padlocked. On the opposite side, hidden beneath some brush and one of the batting cage's nets, was a normal-sized door. It was also metal, but it was a bit rusted, and it didn't have a noticeable lock. Just a metal bar that read, "Push." "Are we going in?" I asked. Matt looked around carefully before deciding. "If we can," he said, pushing down on the metal bar. The slightly rusted door moved an inch, if that, but with a few good kicks, it slammed open with an echoing thud. "So much for being quiet." "Let's go," Matt said, turning his flashlight on as he stepped inside the building. Jenny followed him, her eyes scanning every corner for a photo op. I took my own flashlight and casually looked around. There was stuff everywhere. Clubs, bats, golf balls, baseballs, some go-kart parts, and random pieces of wood and metal. But besides all that junk, there were plaster and wooden figures and other pieces from the mini-golf course. A huge gray elephant looked like it had been tossed in a corner, and a giant giraffe with a weird alien-like eye was shoved on top. They looked so strange just lying there, as if they were dead. I almost turned back, feeling a little creeped out, to be honest, and then something else caught my eye. To me, it looked like an old mascot costume or some sort, but then I noticed the wires coming out of it, as well as the glint of metal limbs. I stepped close and shined my flashlight right on it. I couldn't even tell what animal it was supposed to be. The fake fur was just too ratty. The wiring and metal that made the arms and legs were exposed, here and there where the fur had been ripped away. The head of the thing was still oddly on its shoulders, somehow making it seem more alert than the figures around it. I still couldn't tell what the thing was supposed to be, so I knelt down in front of it and shined my flashlight in its face. It was a dog. A big, goofy dog in overalls. One of its eyes was completely gone, with just wires pouring out of the socket and down its face. The other eye was in a better condition than I would have guessed. The black dot that was its pupil looked as fresh as the day that it was painted. Shining the light around, I could see the entire metal structure of the head. Only the fur on the side with the good eye remained intact. Guys! Come look at this," I called out. "I found some kind of animatronic thing. I reached towards it, wanting to lift the good section of brown material up to see the whole face. I figured Jenny would love to take a picture of it. Suddenly, the eye moved. I cannot stress this enough. I saw the eye move. I let out a sharp word or two and fell back onto the ground, dropping the flashlight in the process. I watched it roll just out of my reach before I turned back to the animatronic. My eyes widened. It was standing up. The weight of its head looked like it would fall to its chest if it had looked down, but it could see me perfectly with the head cocked like that. I could feel it. I watched its jaw creak open as if it were to speak, but the whole thing snapped down with a clang, dropping a few inches down, barely being held up by the wires in the dog's face. Without any sort of man-made sound from a voice box or anything, the dog spoke. Its words were chillingly smooth, as if a person were standing before me instead of a hunk of rusted wire. It was angry.
"What do you think you're doing?"
it asked, taking a shaky, clanging step forward. I was too afraid to move. I was frozen, staring at the dog in terror.
"Get out,"
it whispered, the angry tone still noticeable in its voice.
"Get out of here, now."
The now was slightly deeper, almost demonic. "Where are you?" I heard Matt call out. "You're supposed to keep your flashlight on." I turned my head to call out to him, but no words formed. I heard the animatronic's eye move in the same direction before it once again peered down at me, regaining my attention. We stared soundlessly at one another until Matt spoke again. "I found your flashlight," he said, having picked it up from the ground just a few feet away, scanning one side of the room with it, having passed his back to Jenny. And then I was blinded as one of the beams of light turned right at the animatronic. It looked even more terrifying standing up. Then I heard Jenny scream. "What is that? Why? How did it just move?" I heard the shutter on her camera and watched the flash light up the dog's face even more. She gasped as the camera fell on the ground with a thud. "Matt, we have to go, now!" "Come on!" shouted Matt. "Get out! Both of you! Let's get out of here!" I clambered to my feet at his voice, only being stopped just before I turned to leave. One of the arms of the animatronic shot out, the cold metal hand wrapping around my throat in a vice-like grip. I couldn't breathe. I stared astonishingly into the one good eye of the thing, trying to pry the sharp metal fingers off. I winced, feeling them pierce into my flesh. Growing weak from the pain and the lack of oxygen, I hung limp in the dog's clutches. My eyes never left his until I felt myself fly across the room and smash against the wall before everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I was lying on my back in the parking lot beside Matt's car. "Oh, you're awake!" Jenny said tearfully. Looking into her face, I could tell she'd been crying. "Get in the car! Get in the car!" I could hear Matt yelling. Jenny tried to help me up, but she couldn't muster the strength, and I couldn't manage to move. I'm not sure if it was from the pain or the shock. Matt shooed Jenny away and pulled me into the back seat. He and Jenny got in. Soon after, we peeled out of there as Matt's foot hit the pedal. They took me to the hospital and said that I fell while skateboarding and rolled down a hill. It was totally plausible. I skateboarded the park almost once a week, and the hill they were referring to was a man-made rocky hill. Both my parents and the hospital believed the story, so the three of us could at least feel some relief. After that, the three of us became very withdrawn, at school and at home. I want someone to talk to you about this so badly that's why I'm writing this. Maybe in some weird way it will actually help, but I have to be quiet about it. I can't tell anyone what happened there. None of us can. If we do, our parents will just put us away. Like they did my brother. Jenny wants to go back so that she can find her camera, but Matt keeps telling her to just let it go. I've been having these nightmares every night since. I'm running through the park and the dog is right on my heels. I'll never forget that clanging sound. I still hear it. If we could get our hands on that camera, maybe people would believe us. Then they'd have to let my brother out. He isn't crazy. None of us are. I saw it. I saw that dog. I still see him. Standing in the corner of my room. He doesn't say anything. He just stands there, staring at me with his one good eye. I've considered trying to take his picture one more time, but He won't let me. I can fight him off eventually. I know I can. I'm stronger now. I can get my brother out of that place. I'll find the proof. I just need to get away from this dog. I should have never set foot in that old park.